Hi everyone, so I'm going to do some mixing with you today. I know you've been doing stuff with Ben. I'm going to do a slightly different tune here. So this is one of Tim's songs, which we recorded last year in Studio One. But it's got violin on it and double bass, acoustic guitar, and some programmed bits that Tim's put in as well. So there's some interesting things going on here. So this is as recorded. There's no processing on it yet. There's some stuff on the synths and drums, but they're just the default stuff that Logic does, so we can look at those later. Main vocals were compressed through the distressor when we did it. Acoustic guitars. Don't think I compressed those. Double bass I probably compressed a little bit, but we'll probably want to put on some more compression. So we'll just go through it bit by bit. Look at EQ, compression, effects, etc. So we'll just start looking at acoustic guitars, see what we've got there. So these are recorded with our Coles ribbon mics, which you guys haven't used that much, but they're really nice. Ribbon mics tend to have less high end in them. They just sound really warm, quite nice on acoustic instruments. So these ones drop off their frequency response around 15.5, 16K, I think. So there's a lot of high end you don't get, which, depending on the sound you want, could be detrimental, but this is quite a warm sounding song, so they work quite nicely for that. So let's solo out these guitars and just have a listen to them. Okay, so you get the idea there. So they've already panned them slightly left and right because we're doing a space pair on the guitar. So first thing to make sure is that they're in phase. So if we recorded this correctly, which I think I did, should have measured both mics from the sound hole. So let's have a look here and just check for phase. It's good practice to check for phase regularly before you even start doing anything else on the mix, and then you make sure that everything's looking good. So this looks pretty good so far, so let's move in here on something we can see. So yeah, you can see the beginning of that. They're ever so slightly out, but you could take it from the peak here. But it's such a small difference. I'm not really worried about that. They're pretty much spot on. I definitely measured them, so I'm not worried about that. So yeah, they're in phase, so that's good. Let's look at the actual tonality of the mics. So if we listen to one at a time. So that one's gone with bass end in it, so it's probably on the body. This one's probably on the neck. So that kind of makes sense. So it's up to you kind of how you want to mix these. We kind of want to make them sound nice and bright, so I'm going to try and control that bass end on this one first. So let's bring up an EQ here and have a listen to it. So again, like I've said before, all the subby stuff, you don't need it. At least below 50 hertz, I wouldn't have thought. Remember, we've got double bass on this, and the double bass is producing a lot of low end, so I'm kind of taking some of the low end away from the acoustic guitars to leave space for the double bass. Remember, a mix is kind of taking some frequencies away from instruments that aren't really important and making space for others, along with panning and other things. But if you leave everything with all the frequencies in it, it's just going to be a mess. So you need to make some decisions about where you want to cut or where you want to boost. So let's just roll off some low end here. Ooh, my computer's having a Barney. Let's sort that out. Buffer size is good, should be fine. It's alright now. I can hear that we're just cutting out a bit of that sub, which is nice. Might even take off a bit more, to be honest. Might add a bit of high end, just give it a bit of zing. Not too wide. Let's sweep this. It's quite nice there. Drop it a bit. We don't want too much of a boost. Cool. It's just a bit brighter. Remove some muffledness. That sounds good for now. Let's go to the other one. Again, I'm going to move the low here. Similar kind of high boost. It's around here, I think. 7.5. Yeah, there we go. 5.5. 1.5. There we go. A little brighter, remove some low. See how they sound in context. So let's go back here with them both on. Now they're being percussively strummed, so that's going to be on the recording. You can control it a little bit with compression, but that's the way it was played. So some people try and remove some of that. It's quite difficult to remove that because it's inherent in the recording, so it's fine. When it's in with everything else, it's okay. So we'll come back to compression later, but they sound okay. So there's already some automation on here that I think Tim did, or I might have done earlier. I'm just going to turn these down a bit. I think they're a bit loud. Just trying to match the volume of both mics, so the left mic is a bit louder, probably closer to the finger slap with the strumming perhaps, but that's okay. We're just trying to match it. Cool, that's nice. What I'll probably do when I actually process these acoustic guitars, I'm not gonna compress each one individually. I'm going to run them to a bus and compress them that way. Again, I think because they're two mics making up one instrument, you can just add one compressor to them. There's different trains of thought on that. That's generally the way I do it. So we've got the second acoustic guitar as well, which I'm going to probably put on similar settings. Let's check the second one out. So this one's strummed, so it's a little different. So let's pull over the EQs first and see if those sound nice. Cleaned it up straight away. Might even take out some low mid, let's see. Sometimes that's a bit muddy. That sounds a bit better. Check it on the right. Definitely needs a bit of low mid out here. Cool, that's cleared up a bit, I like that. Cool. So that's okay so far. We'll send them to 2 separate buses. So let's bus the entire output of this to bus 1. And so bus 1 is going to be guitar 1. And then bus 2, you guessed it, guitar 2. Because we may still want to do slightly separate things to them. And I'm also going to make these red, so I know they're guitars. Alright, cool. So something that's worth mentioning now that's kind of cool about Logic, I might have said this before. So these buses have got a left mic and a right mic, so they're essentially a stereo channel from 2 mic sources. So when you've got your stereo track, you can obviously pan it left and right. But if you click on the right click on the panning part, you can choose stereo pan, which is cool, and this allows you to control not only left and right where they are in the stereo field, but you can control how wide that stereo track is, which is really cool. So I use this a lot with things like guitars, heavy guitars on rock mixes, so the guitars are wide, whereas the drums, things like overheads and stuff, I pan them, I control how wide they are, so I leave the extreme left and right for the electric guitars, and the drums are slightly more central, which gives separation stuff, which is cool. So we may want both of our pairs here a little bit further in, because we're going to put other things outside. Things like reverb will be wider, some of the supporting instruments and things. So we could play around with that. We might come back and change it later, but that's my general setup here. And it should just create space for other things in the mix. Alright, so those are the acoustic guitars for now. So let's see what else we've got going on here. So I'll have to check that automation later. I think there's a couple of little hits that are a bit weird, so we automated them down. I think just still sounds from the takes and stuff. It's no big deal, but I had to be done a little edit, I think. Let's check. That's odd. Let's turn that automation off. See what that was. Don't think there's an issue there. That's weird. Why is that there then? Very strange. Let's get rid of it. Really odd. Don't know what that's there for. Strange. Anyway, never mind. Okay, it's always worth checking those things. So we're actually going to do the double bass next. Come back to violin. I think getting the double bass locked in is more important first. So we actually had 3 mics on the double bass to begin with, but removed one because I didn't want it. So I think we had a Coles ribbon, one of my SE Electronics Voodoo ribbon mics, and a C414. I think we stuck with both of the ribbon mics in the end. It didn't label it well, bad me, at the time, so I can't remember which one's which, but it doesn't matter. I can listen to them. So, I was just looking at them again because we've got multiple mics on here, so I was just checking for phase. And if you look at the waveforms on both of these, and you zoom in, you'll notice they're opposite. So you're definitely getting phase cancellation here. They should both be on the positive or the minus part of the wave at the same time. So let's have a listen to them, and then I'll show you what we can do about that. So let's just listen to the double basses. Okay, now what I'm going to do, there's 2 ways you can invert phase. Easiest way is on one of the mics to go down to utility, gain, mono, and then just phase invert, so flip it. So this is it before, and then if I flip it, all that low end comes back, which was being phase cancelled by both the mics, by one of them being out of phase with the other. It's actually quite a massive difference. Without, with, huge. Anyways, so you can do it that way. Or the other way you could do it would be you could turn that plugin off, and you could double click on the waveform, and then if you go to File, Functions, you can press Invert, which will flip it. And then you don't have to have a plugin on there. But because there's two regions, I'm just going to do it with the plugin for now. It's fine. But just so you know, you can invert it, reverse it, do whatever you want. So we're just going to have our gain plugin there, and then our double basses are in phase. Sounds great. Nice and low. Okay, so we'll listen to them individually and then as a whole and see how it fits. So turn cycle off. Let's have a look. Sounds nice. So we want the depth from this, so that's why we cut some of the low end off on the guitars. So you can keep that intact, really. Doesn't really need that much. I mean, you could try and make it a bit brighter, but I like the depth of it. So we'll see in context with the mix how that sounds. I mean, I think compression is going to be more important here. So they're quite well gain staged. So what I'm going to do is send both of these to a bus, always with the bus. And this is a bass bus, double bass actually, in fact. Cool. So now I can just solo the bus. Probably turn them down a bit actually as well. They've got no automation on, so. Now that we flipped the phase on one of them, they're so powerful together, which they weren't before. You can turn them down a lot in the mix. So let's put a compressor on the bus here. So dynamics, I'm just going to use stock Logic plugins for this. I've got other compressors I'd use usually, but I'll just show you the stock ones. So it's bass, so I quite like the FET for this, the FET. Or you could use the Opto, which is a valve-based one. Let's try the FET, see what that does. Okay, too much here. So auto gain, remember to turn that off. Attack's way too fast, so let's roll that back a bit. And threshold's too high. Just want a bit, nothing crazy. Maybe 4:1 ratio. It's quite nice. Bring out a little bit of attack on the notes, which is quite nice. It's percussive, so let's bring that attack pick a bit and retain some of our attack. If our attack's set too fast, it will squash the hits on the strings, which we don't really want. It's cool, I like that. Cool. Alright. Could have a global EQ here for both mics. Could add a bit high end for a bit of definition. Again, sort of around 5-6K is nice. Yeah, just brings it out a bit. Nothing crazy. Super low end. Don't need anything below 30 Hertz. Okay. see what we got. Let's turn the violins off as well so they don't come in. Let's just get everything else. Guitar, bass, and the percussion will be in here, but we haven't mixed that yet. But let's see. Maybe that's a bit too much low end in this. So let's just maybe tidy up the sub a bit. Some of that low mid again. Just a touch. So in isolation, when it's soloed, you go, oh, you're losing some of that low end. I don't like that. But when you listen to it in context in the mix, you've got to remember how it sits with everything else. So if it's too subby, it's just going to overtake other things. So EQ with it soloed, but then always listen back in context to everything else. You need to do that. Otherwise you just get too fixated on one instrument, think it sounds amazing, but it just doesn't fit with the other elements, which means you've wasted your time. So regularly check back in context for the rest of the mix. Okay, so there's some elements in here where we're probably going to need a little bit of automation. For example, those notes are just really quiet, so we're probably going to have to lift those up a bit. What I'm going to do to make this easier, I'm going to group these. So if I select both of our bass channels, then go to the mixer, I've shown you how to do this before, but anyways, click here, new group, so group 2, bass. We've already actually have a group set up for them. So select that, they're going to move to, no, they're not going to move together, why is that? So on bass, settings, editing, volume, should, automation mode. Oh, there we go. Now they're moving. Weird. So to turn the group off, it's Shift G, or you can turn groups inactive or active there if you want to. So I'm just gonna, this is fine. So on these notes, if I click here, the other one's going to copy what I do, which is kind of cool. So let's push these up a little bit. See what that does. Another cool thing, if you realise there are other little bits which need doing it, just select the boost you've done, hit Alt and drag it. And then we have a little louder bit here as well. Nice. And we can just keep running through and adding that. You can play with compression a bit more so that the stronger notes are squashed more, but I don't want to overly compress it. It's an acoustic instrument, and I don't like, with things like that, really heavily compressing them. You can hear the artifact of it. And you've got to be careful. So it might take longer doing it this way, but I think I have more control over what I'm doing. And ultimately more control over the mix. So I can see there's some quiet bits here, so let's turn those up a touch. And there too. So that's the kind of idea. You go through the mix and add more and more. I'm not going to do all of it now because that's going to get a bit boring for you. But when you're doing mixes and you have those little quiet notes, you might want to automate it up a little bit. It might make life easier. Okay, so I'm going to keep them grouped. They're running off the bus now anyways, so it's fine. By the way, when you're mixing, do think about gain staging. So make sure that you don't have anything that's too loud. So at the moment, we've still got 7 decibels of headroom on our output, which is fine, 6.2. If that starts to peak and go red, that's bad. You should be aiming to mix to have about 5 to 3 decibels of headroom on your output before you master. Some people have less, some people have more. I generally try and aim for 5. That's just my rule of thumb. Whatever works for you, but that's how I've always done it. Ben might be slightly different. But generally the idea is that if you're mixing, what people say, that mixing too hot, so your levels are too high, there's no reason for that. Bring everything down, give yourself lots of space. It's not about volume when you're mixing, you're shaping the song how you want it to sound. You're going to make it louder when you master. So don't worry about things being loud, turn them down. It really doesn't matter. What's more important is that everything's controlled and nothing's fighting too hard. If any of your tracks at any point are going into the red and peaking, that's bad. That just should never be happening unless you're purposely peaking them, which sometimes you can do. If you want to put limiters on them and do weird effects, sometimes it works on drums and vocals and stuff, but as a general rule of thumb, you don't want to do that. Okay. Cool. Also, just while we're here, something you might have noticed, and let's get rid of this. On some of these tracks, they've got these little down arrows here, which you might know what they are. They're called take folders. So what we did when we recorded these parts is we did multiple passes, multiple takes, and just recorded over the same section. So what Logic does is really cool. It actually records these separate takes. So we've got 2 takes here. Let's go to a bigger part. Let's say, look at this. And you see there's 2 takes. So the idea of this is, let's say, this part was good, but that part wasn't from this take. You can just have that bit from take 2 and that bit from take 1, and Logic will just switch between the different takes. And if you've been doing it to this doesn't work if you haven't done it to a click, by the way. It needs to be done to a click track for this to work, otherwise obviously they won't be in the same timing. But most of the time, unless you play it really well, you should be playing to a click anyway. Some songs don't need it, but as generally, click makes editing easier. As a producer, I hate recording bands that don't play to a click, unless they can play it really well and just do multiple takes and I don't need to edit it, and that's fine. But if they keep making mistakes and they're not playing to a click, it's an absolute nightmare for me. So yeah, this works if you're doing it with a click. So you can switch between these different takes, and it's really handy. So especially if you're recording on your own, if I'm doing guitar on my own, or even if I'm recording drums on my own, I'll just set it to record. I'll do 5 or 6 takes all in a row, and then I'll edit those takes from the comp afterwards, which is really, really useful. There's loads of information online about this, and I can do an in-depth video about how comping works if you want. But yeah, I'm going to put it back to where it was because I don't need that. But you can see, because I've comped it, there's this line here. So I'm getting rid of that. That goes. Now, if we were comping these, because we've got the reverbs and the 2 mics, what you'd want to do is you would want to do the comp edits when they're all grouped. Then obviously if you switch from one take to another, it's going to do it on the other tracks. If I just edit that and don't edit those, that's going to sound really weird. It's a separate take, so you must do it when grouped, which is why I said I can explain that in another video if you want. But just if you wonder what that is and what it does, these are the comp folders for multiple takes. Okay, cool. Okay, we're going to have a look at the drums now. We'll do violin next week, I think. It's just a sequence put in here. It's kind of a supporting sequence. It's not doing anything crazy, but it's keeping a nice backbeat going. So let's just have a listen to it first. So I've got a compressor ready to go and an EQ, but I haven't done anything yet. Now, when you so we'll just bring this out here. When you choose the normal drum kits, that you just can EQ the kit globally. So it's all of the drums just on one channel. But if you go down here to producer kits, this gets a bit more interesting. So we're going to use exactly the same kit as before, the Smash kit, but we're going to go to the Smash Plus. Then something really cool happens. If you hit this expand arrow, you get all these different elements of the kit. So rather than now just having the whole drum kit on one channel, we've got all the parts of the kit individually, which is really useful. So let's have a look again. So let's just set up a little loop here. So now I can just hear the overheads on their own. I can just hear the kick on its own. Huh? How cool is that? So we got loads of cool stuff we can do here. Also, the way that they've panned this stuff here, if we want to do it drummer's perspective, so obviously they've done it differently. Let's pan that tom out. Let's pan that floor tom out. I'm not going to hard pan them because I don't want them like that in my mix. There we go. This is going to be way more realistic. You can control individual volumes of the elements as well as compression and other things. So let's have a look. These are the overheads here. So there's just a little bit of high end added there for the cymbals, which is fine. I'm just bringing out the hats a little bit. I want to bring out a little bit more of that cross stick here. So just bring that out. Don't know any below here. That's fine. Any compression on the overheads? No. Plus I wouldn't use the vintage Opto either. Probably go FET for drums. Maybe classic vintage VCA is quite nice. Just a touch. See the difference in bringing out that side stick definition? Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Medium knee. So should be about the same volume, just a bit more punch. So that's cool. I like that. So that's overheads. Kick in. So yeah, they've done a low mid cut here on the kick in, which is fine. I might even make that a bit wider. I like it there. Yeah, that's fine. Let's see what's happening with the compression here. Not much. So you use a vintage FET, that's fine. See, attack's too fast. So a slower attack, faster release. It's not doing much. Yeah, just giving it a bit more attack, a bit more punch on the hit there. Sorry. I'm drinking tea, you might be able to hear. So that's nice, nothing crazy, just always remember to turn the plug-in on, turn it off, have you made it sound better or just louder. There's a bit more attack there, I like that. Nothing too aggressive here. Let's try kick out. So I'm going to use the same comp for this, so let's copy that over. good. So on this one, we've got the low mid, but we've got no bass boost, so let's have a bit of a... Just a little bit of a subtle bass boost there, and then I'll do a low mid cut with this one. Yeah, I like that. Let's listen to both kicks in context. Cool, nicely gain stage too. Look at that. Cool, alright, I'm happy with that. So let's go for snares. Can use this one again. Again, want that attack. I don't know why they've gone for fast attacks, it's weird. Anyway. It's not being hit that hard, so... That's fine. EQ wise, what we got here? So, have a boost at 500. Don't need that low. Don't want to make it too much louder. That sounds cool. The quiet element, that's okay. I don't like that much. I don't want that much of the bottom snare in anyways. That's cool. Hi-hat seems fine already, but generally what I do is high pass it. So you've got just a nice sort of high-end hi-hat. Yeah, subtle. Doesn't need compressing, I don't think. I don't think toms are getting used here. I don't think toms get used. If there is a tom hit somewhere, I'll check it later. But yeah, so can you see how much more control you have using a producer kit? You've also got room mics as well, so this is cool. So you could add quite an aggressive compression on this. Let's go crazy. Yeah, fun. Like that. Fast attack and release if you want kind of a squashed room sound, which can be quite nice. Yeah, fun. It's a bit too much. fun. Alright, cool. So now I'm happy with the settings I've put on the kit, so I can just fold that down and we're back to our normal drums. But yeah, producer kits, check them out, super cool. Okay, also now I'm gonna do the stereo pan on this, and I'm gonna make sure my drums aren't going to the extremities, because I might actually push the guitars out there later or something else. So listen to the difference. So if you make it narrower, you get more focus in the middle, less at the sides, but more punch. So that's probably about right. I like that. Cool, let's save that and let's see what we're getting. So that bass is just a little bit too warm, I think, still. Just going to remove a bit more sub from it. Maybe even round that out a touch. Yeah, I'm still going to have to pull that up a bit, that's alright. Might even saturate a little bit, so you can add a little bit of soft distortion in on the compressor. I would give it a little bit of drive. And a bit more high end, maybe. Okay, cool. We'll leave it there for today, and we'll look at some of these other synths next week, violins and maybe vocals. The bass still needs a little bit of fiddling with, but I'm going to have to do the last edits on that when everything else is in context, see how it fits. But yeah, getting there. Cool. All right, see you guys next time.